Many women engage in intimacy not because they are deeply moved by passion or desire, but because they are searching for something far deeper, validation. From a young age, many women are taught, directly or indirectly, that their value is linked to how attractive they are to men. Society places a heavy emphasis on appearance, desirability, and being wanted. Whether it's in childhood praise, teenage peer dynamics, or adult relationships, there's a consistent message: if a man desires you, you are worthy. This belief system becomes so deeply ingrained that, over time, it shapes how women view themselves and their bodies. Validation becomes the silent motivation behind many intimate encounters. A woman may not feel ready, or she might not feel a genuine desire in the moment, but if she believes that her value is rooted in being wanted, she may still proceed. Because being wanted means being enough. The problem is that this form of validation is external. It's fleeting. It depends entirely on how someone else perceives her, rather than how she perceives herself. And the more a woman relies on external validation to feel worthy, the more disconnected she becomes from her own true needs, desires, and boundaries. This is not to say that women don't enjoy intimacy or desire connection, but the motivation behind engaging in it matters. When it's driven by an inner longing for emotional affirmation, maybe if he wants me, I'll feel special, beautiful, secure, then intimacy becomes a means of proving worth rather than a celebration of connection. It's no longer about mutual pleasure, mutual vulnerability, or shared love. It becomes a silent cry: tell me I'm enough. Show me I matter. The tragedy is that many women don't even realize they're seeking validation through intimacy. It's subconscious, it's deeply emotional, and it's often reinforced by previous relationships where affection was only given when something was offered in return. A woman who grew up without emotional affirmation may seek it physically. A woman who constantly compares herself to societal standards may offer her body just to feel like she meets the mark. In both cases, the intimacy isn't about joy, it's about relief, temporary relief from feelings of not being good enough. Over time, this behavior can leave a woman feeling empty, even resentful. Because what was meant to make her feel seen ends up making her feel used. She may begin to question why she doesn't feel fulfilled after being physically close with someone. She may wonder why the connection fades so quickly, or why she feels more alone afterward. It's because validation that comes from outside will never truly satisfy what is missing inside. True validation comes from self-recognition. It's when a woman sees herself as whole, even without someone else's approval. It's when she engages in intimacy not to feel worthy, but because she already knows she is. It's when she stops asking, "Do you want me?" and starts declaring, "I want this because I choose it." Until that shift happens, many women will continue to give their bodies away, hoping to feel enough. But enough is not something you become by being chosen. It's something you already are. Once you choose yourself, fear of rejection or abandonment is one of the deepest emotional triggers many women carry into their intimate relationships, often without even realizing it. This fear doesn't just surface during arguments or moments of emotional distance. It subtly influences decisions, boundaries, and even when and how a woman chooses to engage in intimacy. For some women, the idea of saying no, expressing discomfort, or not performing a certain way in bed sparks an overwhelming anxiety. What if he leaves? What if I'm no longer enough? That fear becomes so paralyzing that they choose compliance over authenticity. This fear often has roots that stretch far beyond current relationships. Many women grow up in environments where love feels conditional, given when they behave, withdrawn when they don't. They may have seen caregivers leave, betray, or emotionally neglect them. As a result, they begin to equate love with performance and presence with obedience. When they become adults, they subconsciously fear that setting boundaries or expressing discomfort might result in rejection or abandonment. So they do what they've always done. They try to be good, agreeable, and emotionally pleasing, even when it costs them their comfort or well-being. Intimacy becomes one of the places where this fear shows up most. A woman may agree to physical closeness, even when she's not emotionally aligned, not because she wants to, but because she believes denying him might lead to emotional distance, withdrawal, or even being replaced. There's a quiet panic behind her choices, a need to keep the connection intact at all costs. She may tell herself it's not a big deal, that it's part of being a partner, but deep down she feels a growing disconnection from her own agency. The more she compromises to avoid abandonment, the more abandoned she feels by herself. What's more, society has romanticized sacrifice in women. Many are praised for being ride or die, for sticking around no matter what, for putting their partner's needs first. That cultural conditioning teaches women that endurance equals love, and that enduring discomfort proves commitment. But the truth is, when intimacy is driven by fear rather than desire, it doesn't deepen love, it erodes it. It creates a dynamic where one partner gives too much and the other assumes it's normal. This fear-based intimacy also builds silent resentment. A woman may begin to feel emotionally unsafe, like she's constantly performing, always on edge, waiting for validation or fearing rejection. And eventually, even though she stays physically present, her emotional presence starts to fade. She detaches. She loses interest, not because she doesn't care, but because she's exhausted from constantly trying to secure love that should have been unconditional to begin with. Emotional bargaining is a hidden motive that often guides many women's decisions to engage in intimacy, not because they feel deeply connected or turned on, but because they are hoping that giving their bodies will get them something more valuable in return: love, commitment, security, or emotional closeness. It's the silent trade that happens in the background of relationships. If I give him this, maybe he'll stay, maybe he'll choose me, maybe he'll love me more. While the act appears consensual on the surface, underneath lies a transaction rooted in emotional hunger. This behavior isn't manipulative, it's protective. Many women have been conditioned to believe that physical intimacy is their strongest or only tool to earn emotional intimacy. They've watched it in media, learned it through culture, and even experienced it in past relationships. Often they've been taught that their worth is connected to what they can offer rather than who they are. So when emotional needs go unmet, when they don't feel seen, prioritized, or cherished, they fall into the trap of bargaining, offering physical closeness in hopes of emotional return. But this trade is unbalanced from the beginning. Love, trust, and emotional intimacy are not currencies you can buy with your body, and yet many women continue to give in the bedroom while starving in the relationship. They may hope that intimacy will create closeness, that their partner will finally open up, become more affectionate, or take them more seriously. They may believe that if they please him enough, he'll stop pulling away, he'll commit, or he'll recognize their value. But that rarely happens. In fact, the more one gives in hopes of receiving, the more one begins to feel unsafe. Emotional bargaining often leads to deep internal conflict. On one hand, a woman wants to feel desired and connected. On the other hand, she feels like she's constantly giving without being met in return. She may start to feel resentful, frustrated, or confused. She questions why she still feels so emotionally distant despite being physically close. That's because genuine connection cannot be forced, and real love cannot be bought through self-sacrifice. What she's seeking requires mutual emotional investment, not just physical presence. Over time, emotional bargaining takes a toll on a woman's self-worth. Each time she gives herself, hoping to receive something else, she reinforces the idea that she must earn love rather than simply deserve it. This cycle not only erodes intimacy, but also disconnects her from her own body, boundaries, and voice. She may begin to feel like her needs don't matter, or that she must always perform to keep the relationship alive. Breaking free from this pattern requires deep self-awareness and healing. A woman must begin to see herself as inherently worthy, not for what she can offer, but for who she is. She must learn to separate affection from obligation and to communicate her emotional needs directly without using her body as a bridge. Intimacy should never be a currency for love. It should be a celebration of it. And when a woman stops bargaining and starts believing in her own worth, she no longer has to beg for connection. She becomes the standard. She becomes the one who chooses, not the one who waits to be chosen. In today's hyper-visual, hyper-sexualized world, many women are under immense pressure to perform rather than simply experience intimacy. Performance pressure and comparison culture have turned what should be a deeply personal, vulnerable, and connective act into a stage where women feel they are constantly being evaluated. Whether it's through media portrayals of intimacy, social media influencers posting curated versions of their relationships, or the unrealistic expectations fueled by pornography, women are bombarded with distorted messages about what intimacy should look and sound like. And in the midst of all this noise, many lose touch with what feels natural and genuine to them. Performance pressure often stems from a desire to meet an unspoken standard, one that says a woman must be endlessly seductive, responsive, flexible, and enthusiastic at all times. She must moan just the right way, move like a fantasy, and look flawless while doing it. Many women begin to feel like their bodies and behaviors in the bedroom are being graded, even if their partner isn't directly critiquing them. The mind starts racing during moments that should feel safe and free. Am I doing enough? Does he think I'm good? Is he comparing me to someone else? What makes this worse is the culture of constant comparison. Women are subtly and openly compared to exes, models, celebrities, or even fictional characters. If a man once praised a certain act or hinted at a preference based on something he's seen, a woman may internalize that as the new standard she must meet or exceed. The bedroom becomes a battleground where self-worth is measured against invisible competition. The result? She stops showing up as herself and begins to mimic what she thinks will keep his attention. But when intimacy turns into a performance, connection is lost. A woman may be physically present but emotionally absent, focused more on how she looks or how she sounds than how she feels. Instead of asking herself what she wants or what brings her pleasure, she's focused on playing a role she believes will earn approval or keep her partner satisfied. This not only leads to emotional detachment, but it also builds quiet resentment. She may begin to feel like a character in someone else's script, no longer the author of her own experience. And while many women are performing, they're also silencing themselves. They may suppress their discomfort, fake satisfaction, or avoid communicating about their needs, believing that honesty might disrupt the illusion they've worked so hard to maintain. But intimacy without authenticity is hollow. It may impress in the moment, but it doesn't build trust or deepen love. To escape this pressure, women must give themselves permission to stop performing and start participating, fully, honestly, and unapologetically. They must unlearn the idea that their worth is tied to how well they please or how perfectly they play a part. Real intimacy isn't a scene to perfect. It's a space to be real. And in that space, comparison fades, pressure dissolves. What's left is presence, connection, and the kind of freedom that makes intimacy deeply meaningful, not just memorable. Nevertheless, sometimes we experience freedom without even knowing it. Freedom that remains but weighs little nor seems to come. Not without lifting our big foot from a waterfall of doubt. Not without lifting our foot from a waterfall of doubt. Not without lifting our foot from a waterfall of doubt. Not without lifting our foot from a waterfall of doubt. Not without lifting our foot from a waterfall of... When a woman chooses her own truth over performance, she reclaims not just her pleasure, but her power. Internalized gender roles shape much of how women view intimacy, often without them even realizing it. From early childhood, girls are fed a steady diet of ideas about what it means to be a good woman. And many of those ideas are rooted in service, sacrifice, and submission. In many cultures, women are taught that part of their value lies in how well they cater to the needs of others, especially men. This belief doesn't just influence how they interact emotionally or socially, it seeps into the most private parts of their lives, including their intimate relationships. When it comes to intimacy, these roles often tell women that their purpose is to please, to give, and to endure. They are told, either explicitly or through observation, that a man's pleasure matters more, that his desires should be fulfilled first, and that saying no or prioritizing their own comfort might make them appear frigid, selfish, or unloving. Over time, these messages create a powerful internal script. A good woman satisfies her man. This script overrides her own desires, boundaries, and emotional state, compelling her to engage in intimacy even when her heart or her body is not aligned. Many women carry the weight of these expectations silently. They may not feel excited or emotionally ready for intimacy, but they show up anyway, because deep down they believe it's their role. They may feel guilty for turning down advances, even if they're exhausted or emotionally drained, because saying no feels like failing some invisible standard of femininity. This is what internalized gender roles do. They distort a woman's relationship with her own agency. This one-sided dynamic can also create a harmful cycle in relationships. If a woman constantly prioritizes her partner's needs while suppressing her own, she may begin to feel used, unappreciated, or invisible. Yet because she believes this is just what women do, she might not even know how to voice her dissatisfaction. Instead, she swallows her discomfort and continues performing the role. But over time, resentment builds. The intimacy becomes transactional rather than emotional or joyful. What's particularly damaging is that these roles are often reinforced by well-meaning advice from older women, religious teachings, or romanticized portrayals in media. Messages like, keep your man happy, don't let him look elsewhere, or a wife should submit, all contribute to the idea that women are responsible for managing a man's sexual satisfaction, even at their own expense. And when things go wrong, when a relationship breaks down or a man cheats, the blame is often turned inward. Maybe I didn't do enough. Unlearning these internalized roles is not easy. It requires questioning deeply embedded beliefs and choosing new narratives that honor a woman's voice, body, and right to choose. It means recognizing that true intimacy is not about duty. It's about mutual desire, respect, and emotional safety. A woman's body is not a tool of service. It's a sacred space that deserves care and consideration. When a woman lets go of the pressure to perform a role and instead embraces her right to enjoy, to decline, to communicate, and to be fully present on her own terms, she begins to rewrite the story, not just for herself, but for generations to come. One of the most overlooked reasons many women engage in intimacy to please men is the widespread lack of education around female pleasure. Society has long centered male desire in conversations about sex, leaving many women disconnected from their own bodies, needs, and experiences. From a young age, girls are often taught about reproduction and the risks of sex, pregnancy, diseases, morality, but rarely about pleasure, consent, or emotional readiness. Meanwhile, boys are encouraged to explore their sexuality, to seek gratification, and to be confident in their desires. This imbalance sets the tone for how women understand their role in intimacy, not as active participants, but as passive providers. Because so many women have not been taught that their pleasure matters, or even how to recognize it, they often rely on external cues to measure satisfaction. If the man is happy, if he finishes, if he compliments them afterward, then the experience is deemed successful. But this metric ignores a fundamental truth. Satisfaction is not one-sided. Without self-awareness, many women don't know what brings them pleasure, what boundaries they have, or how to ask for what they want. They move through intimacy performing rather than experiencing, pleasing rather than participating. This gap in education doesn't just exist in schools. It's reinforced by culture, media, and silence. Movies and television rarely portray real female pleasure. Instead, they show exaggerated male-centered versions of sex, often skipping over foreplay, emotional connection, and communication. Pornography, which many people turn to for education in the absence of real conversations, furthers these false portrayals. Women are shown as endlessly willing, instantly aroused, and always satisfied, no matter how disconnected or unrealistic the scene may be. This creates a dangerous standard for both men and women, one that teaches performance, not presence. Even in relationships, this lack of knowledge makes it difficult for women to advocate for themselves. Some feel embarrassed to speak up about what they like, or they may not know how to articulate it at all. Others may have been shamed for their curiosity or labeled as too much for expressing their needs, so they stay quiet. They go along, and they confuse compliance with consent. Over time, this disconnect leaves women feeling emotionally and physically unfulfilled. They may not understand why sex doesn't satisfy them, or why it sometimes feels more like a task than a connection. They may even begin to believe that something is wrong with them. But the truth is, nothing is wrong. They've just never been shown how right it can feel when pleasure is mutual, intentional, and centered around both partners. Empowering women with accurate, shame-free education around their own bodies is the first step toward changing this narrative. It means teaching girls not just to protect themselves, but to know themselves, to value their desires, to set boundaries, and to express what they want without guilt. Because true intimacy begins not with performance, but with knowledge. And when a woman understands her own pleasure, she no longer engages in intimacy just to please. She engages because she is fully, powerfully present.